Dirty Side Supercomputer Initializing, Victoria Online, Analyzing Mexican Grand Prix, Analysis Complete, Supercomputer 6-word synopsis. Tires, Strategy, Dull, Disappointing, Siesta, 14. Let's see how Brian and Rob make this sound interesting. Good luck, guys.
Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today was the Mexican GP. We've actually started talking about it before we hit the record button, and I think we're going to disagree a little bit today. Welcome, Rob. How are you, man?
I'm really good, thanks. I just flown back from the bar I was watching it in. Before we get into the race, I got to give a shout out to the Iron Horse in Unionville. They put the race on at our request. The 8 of us that normally turn up on a 8 a.m. start on a Sunday morning. We were all in there, but we were massively outnumbered by a huge amount of Giants fans. So that bar was bouncing with the Giants game on, and they carved us a little F1 corner out. I turned up with 1 minute before the race started, and the bar manager saw me, and it was like you see in the movies where the VIP turns up. There was no way. It was standing room only. He saw me and my wife and my son, and he went and grabbed a table, brought it out, put it in front of the Formula One screen, 3 chairs, served us beer. It was amazing.
Served your son beer? How old is he?
Not my son. He's my designated driver. It's we've got our own personal Uber now, so...
Well, it's a good thing you enjoyed it at the bar, because I watched it from home. And I took a little Siesta Fiesta because I thought it was boring, but we'll talk more about it in a second. And by the way, that should be what we name the episode, Siesta Fiesta, but apparently we disagree on that. So before we hop into this week's action and even the news, a couple quick things about the US GP to close out from last week. Obviously, we didn't have time to do the fantasy update last week. We'll hit that towards the end, as we always do. But there was one last stat that I found, and I would use the mariachi thing, but it's been so overplayed. I'm going to go with the different SAP stats for the US GP one as we kind of close this one out. I found this utterly amazing. At the speed trap at the U.S. Grand Prix, again, from a week ago, the fastest car of each team was highlighted. And motorsport.com had the stats, so shout out. Rob, if I told you this, I know you're looking at the notes here when I found this, but if I told you, who do you think the fastest car would have been at the U.S. GP at the speed trap?
You would have said off the top of my head, I would have probably said... No, sorry, I was going to be a complete ass then and give exactly the right answer with the exact speed the speed trap because I'm looking at the notes. But I would have said Red Bull without a shadow of a doubt, right?
And if you teed it up as a kind of confusing question, I might have went off and said, Alpine. I don't know. Those would have been off the top of my head. It was Alfa Romeo.
I know. I thought you'd Photoshopped this when I was looking at this graphic. I was like, what?
How is this possible? And it wasn't Valtteri. So Zhou came across at 334.7 kilometers per hour. Now, Red Bull was second. Not too much of a surprise, but a surprise was that the sister team to Red Bull, Adrian Newey Jr. team, AlphaTauri, came across third, right behind, actually a good distance behind Red Bull, and then Alpine. The last item of note is that Mercedes was last. They had the slowest speed trap speed, and it was Lewis. They were 9.9 seconds off the Alfa Romeo team. So I just thought that was fascinating as we kind of close out last week.
Yeah, and closing out last week and kind of rumbling into this week, we finally put the cost cap to bed. So I'm gonna paint a bullseye on my back here, and I'm gonna say something, right? Okay. Us grown-ups that understand how things work put the cost cap to bed. The Twitter warriors out there will never let this go. This will now just be something else they can add into their. If you hate Red Bull, it's just another thing to drop into your arsenal of things to throw at them. But it transpired that the Red Bull had overspent by 1.8 million. Now, this is the little bit I don't quite understand. It's almost like the FIA went, haha, you overspent by 1.8 million, but actually, if you'd have just done this thing right over here in your books and you'd filed this tax credit properly, actually you've only overspent by 432 grand. So shame on you. So I'm like, hang on. So the FIA looking into this, they didn't actually find that they'd gone over. They actually said, well, you have gone over, But if you'd done it right, you wouldn't have gone over by as much. So then the penalty they imposed actually does seem a bit weird. I know Horner called it draconian, but they then gave them $7 million fine and 10% development fine, which on the 1.86 million kind of feels about right. But if you're saying to them, you did overspend by 1.86, but actually you really didn't. If you'd just done that math properly over there, it was only 400,000. The penalty on a 400,000 does feel overkill, but Red Bull screwed up, but not screwed up the way that we thought they did. They actually overinflated their numbers when they could have reported it as lower. So anyway, there we have it. End of cost cap.
Well, we hope.
No, it is. It is. It won't be on Twitter, but it is. Those are the facts.
It is.
Right?
I agree. I called it a nothing burger on our Discord, and I had to explain what I meant to some of my colleagues out there. Meaning, it is a thing, but it was what you'd expect. I mean, the $7 million fine on the 1.86 million pound overage is not against any future cost caps. So it doesn't affect their spending in the future at all. So it just comes out of their pocket, right? So, whomever writes a check, no biggie. I mean, because it really isn't for them. It's not that's not a fine at all. $7 million that doesn't count against the cap. Who cares? The 10% in wind tunnel time, which, by the way, Rob, do we remember when this first came out? Some guy on a podcast somewhere said it would be a wind tunnel reduction. Do you remember who that was?
Nope.
Nope. Oh, I don't either then. It probably was not me. But so it was a 10% reduction in wind tunnel time. Now, just to be clear, wind tunnel time is graded based on where you finish in the championship. And if you finish first, you get the least amount of wind tunnel time. So Red Bull was already at 70% at wind tunnel time because they're the champions. So it's 10% of 70%. So it's really a 7% reduction in nominal amount.
Which is huge.
It is a lot. But again, they have to show people that there's a penalty for going over.
They have. Otherwise, this is huge. If you watched friend of the show Blake Break F1 when he did a summary of this in midweek, and he was kind of saying, right, all the people that want to hate Red Bull are going to say this is nothing. He said, as an aerodynamic, as an engineer, as a former engineer in F1, I'm telling you, this is huge. This is a massive reduction in wind tunnel time. So it's people that say, no, it's only 10%, it's nothing. It's like he's like saying, look, he said, I think his actual video went something along the lines of, this is huge, and anybody who disagrees just doesn't know what they're talking about. He said, and I'm not going to argue with them because they don't know what they're talking about.
It is huge, but it could have been bigger, is my point. It could have been a sporting penalty in terms of points. It could have been any other things. It could
not
have
when
had
they've barely grazed over the.
Well, that's my point. That's why I think,
over the edge, right?
That's why I think it's a nothing burger. I think it all kind of aligns, and we should put it to bed and move on.
Well, you're the one that wants to keep going on about it.
I just wanted people to know.
I'm just in a bad mood because I have to give you kudos, and I hate doing that. So the other piece was that we didn't, because the points hadn't come through last week. I know you said we're going to do the fantasy stuff later, but Cota was also the last round of Rob versus Brian the draft. And Brian won by an obscene amount. So it's the clean sweep. All four races in the draft were won by Brian. And looking back at this now, at that drunken moment in your basement when we pulled this out, and A, we screwed it up, but B, looking at it, oh my gosh, was this a case of heart rolling head? I kind of looked back down at my team I picked, and I was all in on Ferrari. And I'm laughing to myself, picking Ferraris, and you're not taking them. And you're scooping up all the Red Bulls. And here we are, X number of races later, and I'm, surprised that you kicked my butt? I Ferrari fanboyed too much and massively paid the penalty. So well done, Brian.
Thank you.
If you've got the little round of applause, yes, there it is.
I had it ready to go before you even said it. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, but I think it's better that I asked for it rather than you just played it for yourself.
Well, since I play all the sounds, it doesn't really matter. And then also this week, something else that became clear from last week was the Fernando Alonso penalty for turning his car into Knight Rider. By the way, so Natural Paradigm on Twitter, Bryson Sullivan, had a couple of really good analytical views of Fernando and what he did as he went airborne. In terms of slamming the brakes. Now, again, these are reactions. I don't think Fernando thought if I slam the brakes, maybe it'll yank the front end down. Maybe he did. I mean, he's amazing. But he slammed those brakes, and it kind of slowed his upwards trajectory a bit, potentially. Who really knows? But then the best part is he's in the air and he's steering. I mean, that is so good. That is video game Brian. When I'm in the air on things and I'm turning the controller Anyway, so the point is he'd gotten a penalty for driving without a mirror, which I think Haas
no.
protested.
It wasn't driving without a mirror. It was because it was obviously loose, and when he came into the pits, they didn't rectify it, even though it was
Right, they didn't
obviously
yank it
loose.
off.
They left him go back out. Then it came free, and I got to be honest. And we slap on our wrist. We didn't even call it out on the episode last week, but when that thing popped off and it didn't go to the wall side of the track, it went to the middle of the track and bounced around a bit. That really should have given me flashbacks to when Massa had the loose spring go through his helmet. Right now, I know it's a mirror and it didn't come off as much speed, but you can understand why that is something that they should get penalised for. We thought.
But you shouldn't have another team be the police and call it out after the fact.
No, and this is the problem, and this is where the whole thing unravelled, wasn't it? Was that Haas kind of rightly said, "Hang on a minute, we seem to get penalised every
K-Mag is
time."
getting black and oranges every other race.
Every time we even think a piece might fall off our car, before it even has, you guys black and orange flag us and we have to come in. Yet Perez is riding around with a front wing hanging off and you're not giving him anything.
Right.
Alonso's leaving debris everywhere and throwing mirrors at people. This isn't fair. But apparently they lodged that request or appeal after the cut-off time for lodging an appeal. But the FIA went, "Oh, go on, Haas. Go on. We like you. We like Gunther and his boat, so we'll hold the appeal." And Alonso got a penalty. Until Alonso comes along and goes, well, I guess his team, "Well, hang on a minute. You guys are playing by the rules this year." And Haas didn't lodge their appeal until after the cut-off time, at which point the FIA folded yet again, like they seem to this time around. They went, "Oh, yeah, you're right, Alonso. Yeah, sorry, Haas. We're going to put it back how it was." It's just...
Which was just chaos for fantasy F1 because it takes like 5 hours for them to figure out a point anyway. And then they had to take it away and then add it back. It was all a big mess. But you know what? It's just a good reminder that, and we're about to talk about it. You want to talk about the WTF1 video that actually talks about the car?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're into kind of the video roundups now, right? So me, for once, putting one in there. I have a couple. I was watching the WTF Best Internet Reactions. It's always good. If you ever check that video out, it's always good when they highlight these. But they flashed up a picture of a Nokia 3310.
Which for some of our listeners will not know what that is.
And this is exactly what he says on the video. He's like, Alpine turned their car into one of these and flashed it up. He said, and if you're too young to know what this is, this was basically the most indestructible phone in the world. After a nuclear holocaust, the only things left would be Nokia 3310s. It's just indestructible, and that just made me laugh. I was absolutely laughing to myself then because I was like, yeah, that's exactly what Alpine's car turned into. But
I mean, how does that happen? Like, just in all seriousness, right? We talked about this then. We did mention this on the podcast last week. Fernando's front end is very high in the air and slams down into the wall, and he keeps driving. And he finishes the race, sans mirror. But Lewis in Spa hits Fernando, goes airborne in the rear, slams down, race over. Today, we saw Yuki ejected into the air, and then the next thing from Ricardo, and the next thing you know, he's out. Terminal challenges. Fernando's was, I think, worse than those two, and he just motored on. But yet today, no reliability when he's perfectly fine. I don't understand. Like, the gremlins that exist will always confound me.
I think it comes down to that good old-fashioned thing of luck, pure
probably.
Luck. I think Alonso's car comes down like almost flat, and there's no kind of real bouncing around, so maybe everything stays intact. Lewis's, when he rode up and over, it kind of car was all tilted up on one side, so one side came down way harder than the other. Who knows?
Yeah, it is luck. That's
just
George.
Luck.
He hit Carlos last week at the first lap and went right into a cooler, and forget it.
Yep.
Anyway, other videos. This week, I got some feedback from you all that you really enjoy hearing about some of the videos, but we got to be more diverse. So, all right, I'm covering other places, and not only that, I'm digging deeper for the Dirty Siders than ever before. So first off, F1 Driver Challenge, Power to React, Sentinel-1 Power Play. This was from the, and I quote, Aston Martin Aramco Cognizant F1 Team Channel. That is too long a name. We know that's the name of your team. Don't call it the full name. It's YouTube. But anyway, it's 5 minutes. Check it out. I'm going to give you the answers. So if you don't want to know and you want to watch, fast forward 30 seconds or 15 seconds. But basically, it's who can hit the lights the fastest. Seb versus Lance. Seb kicked his butt. And then it was, it wasn't even close. And then it was Nico Hulkenberg, the reserve driver, versus Jessica Hawkins, who's on the W team. And so she's amazing. And at first, she didn't get it. And then the second round, she tied Nico, and then Nico ended up barely beating her at the end. And they actually finished the season. Apparently, I'd missed all of these. with Seb just utterly dominating the rest of the team and taking it home. And now I'm going to show you my dedication to the dirty side. Lando Norris takes on a role as chef at the Waldorf Astoria Amsterdam on the Hilton Honors channel.
Oh my gosh.
Which is not the same channel they play in the hotel when you check in. That's a different channel. 90 seconds long, but it's Lando cooking. It was fun to watch. If you have 90 seconds, check it out.
What was he cooking?
I don't know, like eggs. It was like an egg thing, and he kept breaking the yolk, and then they said I wouldn't eat that, and then he tried again, and it was like anyhow. But it made me smile. And if you don't normally watch the Hilton Honors channel waiting for Formula One content, then shame on you. And then I found a Q&A with McLaren Racing's Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo on, of course, the WebEx channel. So it was 7... I'm not kidding,
my gosh,
man.
Brian.
I'm not joking. These are all this week, and these are real. 7 minutes, dragged a little bit. But if you're really invested in Lando or Daniel or McLaren or just their team, go check it out. But if not, you could skip that one. It was a little fun at times. And then in the States here after USGP, Sir Lewis Hamilton was on Jimmy Kimmel, and Sir Lewis Hamilton talked about being knighted by King Charles, begging to be in the Top Gun movie, and Formula One Racing is the title of it. It was a good interview, and then Jimmy gave Lewis a card to read. And it had lines, famous lines, not just Top Gun, but other lines, because Lewis is talking about movies and branching out. And Lewis, read the "I've got the need for speed" line, but he read it like a doofus. And it was not the best audition to be in a movie. It was 9 minutes. Skip it if you want. And then finally...
That's I Feel the Need, isn't it?
Great. Even better. I feel the need. I typed it wrong. That's correct.
Come on. If you're going to go down a rabbit hole with these weird and wonderful channels, then at least get the things right.
Jimmy Kimmel was not weird and wonderful. The Hilton Honors, on the other hand, in WebEx. And then Ferrari had their SF Scuderia Ferrari full access to the USGP. They do these every week. I think I'm done watching these. They're just unnarrated hodgepodge of videos. I mean, there's nothing great, nothing bad. I waited 14 minutes for something great to happen. I'm like, okay, move on. And then, Rob, you want to close us out here?
Yeah, it was good old, my favourite, Lollipop Man again, but they dropped 2 videos for Austin. One was just all about Lance Stroll, and it was called Lance Stroll Train Spotting, I think. And it's just him waiting for the Alonso train to come along. So he's just sort of randomly walking across the track, and then it keeps flicking to Alonso coming down, portrayed as a train, kind of choo-choo, coming along. And all of a sudden, Stroll just steps out in front of the train, and the train goes airborne and gets wings, and Alonso flies for the rest of the video, which is absolutely fantastic.
That was great.
And I thought that was the best one. And then they did kind of more like a recap of the race, like they always do. And the bit that just made me giggle, just too much really, was when George takes Sainz out. George hits Sainz, and Sainz turns into George. So just think from The Matrix when Agent Smith kind of forms other clones of Agent Smith. That's basically what happens. George runs into Sainz. Sainz turns into George, and everyone asks Sainz, what happened? And he says... George says, he turned into me. So they literally took the radio comment from George and made a little skit about it. It was just fantastic.
Nicely done.
I love
Nicely done. I love it. And then for anybody who is curious, just know that we've recently got all the pods back on YouTube. And you can watch or listen to, however you want to do your YouTube, the full episodes out there. And if you're one of the YouTube listeners, well, then you knew this already, didn't you?
Oh, so that then brought us up to good old race week again. Yeah, practice.
What's going on with these tire tests?
What's the point? Just make them ride around the tracks on BMXs. We get just as much enjoyment and just as much if you want to
learn as much. I mean, there's no point.
Why
I know
can't
Pirelli gets
do
data,
something
but come
somewhere
on.
else and just whatever.
I have an idea.
Go.
Here's my suggestion. You have me show up. What? Why are you laughing already?
I'm sorry. Continue.
You take an old Formula One car from any team you like and put these Pirelli development tires on there, and I'll give you data on it. And then no one has to watch it, and we can have regular practice, and I will do that for a small fee to save everybody the pain in the rump that every FP2 is turning
What I am
into.
thinking for some top quality content is that it's you in one of these cars with the test tires on, but having a video screen in front of you of the Hilton Honors channel, and you have to commentate on the video while trying to drive an F1 track.
Do you actually, in all seriousness, if they put me in an F1 car now, I don't think I get around the lap. I don't think I get around the track.
I don't think you'd fit in the cockpit.
I would not fit in the cockpit. And it's not a fat joke.
It's not a fat joke.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
just
too tall and broad and muscular, as I mentioned.
Muscular,
anyway,
that's where I was
that's
going for,
what I
Brian.
was
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah.
That's what I
Those
thought
guns
about.
won't fit in the cockpit. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But in all seriousness, I don't think an average person could get an F1 car around a track. Do you?
No. I mean, I remember watching, I think it was a Top Gear episode when Richard Hammond tried to take a Renault out, and they just kept slicing together all of the times that he stalled it and took the car about 3/4 of a foot because he wouldn't commit the revs to move the thing off the line, thinking you've kind of got to pull away gently like you do in a road car, and he would just stall every single time.
And then they had a Lotus similar car that Jean Alesi got Jeremy into, and both of them, Jeremy and Richard, were shrieking at every corner. And they know how to do, road tests. So, no, I don't think an average person can get a car around a track. But that's a different story. So stop with the tire tests, please.
So then let's abort practice because it was rubbish. Qualifying was one of the best qualifying sessions I've seen for such a long time, which then in hindsight was not foreshadowing a race in the same way.
No, agreed.
So it was just all kind of out of order. We had Bottas looking amazingly quick in Q1. Poor old Mick did a great lap, but got it deleted. And Lewis went and dropped it fastest. And it was like, ooh, this is looking a bit jumbled up. This is looking a bit... I don't know, it's only Q1, but everyone's still running on the same kind of loads, and it was looking a bit spicy. But with Mick's time being deleted, he dropped out along with both Astons and both Williams, so they were not having a great day.
Now, does Paul know, Pit Lane Paul, do we know, can he confirm that Saturday Valtteri had some...
I had some porridge.
Because he was on fire on Saturday. I mean, that was old Valtteri. Did anyone tell Valtteri he wasn't in a Mercedes anymore? Because he was out there just putting in bombs.
Oh, he was. And
the whole Saturday.
Yeah. And then Q2 came along, and it was like, it wasn't a fluke. Valtteri goes and throws it into...
He was third. It was
just
early.
Yeah, it was just fantastic. And everybody looked... It was really kind of thinking, well, which way is this going to go? It actually started looking like a Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, and real outside bet Valtteri as kind of some kind of shootout. But we lost the other Haas, which in hindsight, when they spoke to Gunther on the wall, was the wrong way round because Mag had K-Mag had the penalty, so it kind of they would have been better off having Mick go through. But you can't really engineer that on the last lap of a quali session. So we lost K-Mag, Gasly, Yuki Zhou, and Danny Rick.
And brake issues started coming up. You remember last week at the USGP, Lewis was having his brakes changed on the grid.
Yes.
And then we hear George in qualifying talking about the brakes. Lando had brake problems. The brakes are becoming a challenge at the end of the year, and I don't know why. It's and it's not just a complaint. I mean, it's actual problems with warping and the functioning of the brakes. I haven't seen this many brake problems crop up at the same time. But anyway, we moved to Q3. Lewis lost the time. George, Checo, the Ferraris were sliding like crazy through almost all of qualifying, but really were struggling. They kept riding the same curb, and they kept sliding off of it, and even doing that during the race. And it was just it was fun to watch. I will say, we had Max, George, Lewis, Checo, Carlos, and then Valtteri ahead of Charles, which was a foreshadowing for Ferrari, the works team, being bad. Lando, Fernando, and then Esteban. And here's my last note on qualifying. They played the Mariachi F1 tune, which we use a lot on this here podcast. I stole this a long time ago, and now F1 wants it back. You can't have it, F1. This is our song. We're going to use it for SAP stats here. You're just going to have to suck it up and play something else next year. You didn't play it last year. That's why I stole it. And so it's annoying to me that they would do that to me. And everyone went wild about it. But we used it first illegally. We're squatting on it and we're not getting off of it. So anyway.
So then we had the race.
Wait, Rob, I'm sorry.
What?
One quick question for you.
Go.
If I were to tell you that I had some stats. Oh, hold on. Let me actually use the right song here. SAP Stats Qualifying Edition. Now, this is not just about Mexico qualifying, but so far, through the active careers of the drivers, I have a question for you. And the question goes something like this. Who do you think has the best record in their career of active drivers of getting into Q3? So what I'm looking for is drivers who have made it like a Q3 appearance rate over their careers. Active drivers, percentage I'm going for. Who do you think's the best?
I don't know why I want to say this, and I'm probably wildly wrong, but they made such a big deal about Valtteri not making it through to Q3 that one time, saying he's basically set up tent and camped in Q3 ever since he's been old enough to drive. So I'll go Valtteri.
So that's not a bad guess, but remember he was at Williams for a while before Mercedes and
Yeah, but he did well there.
Yeah, did he? So Valtteri's third.
Oh, come on, that's not a bad shout.
That's very good. Valtteri's third, 79% of the time he's made it to Q3 in his entire career, which is freaking amazing when you think about it. But no, you can, the two people above Valtteri, you might be able to guess.
Is it going to be Lewis and Max?
Lewis and Max. Lewis is first, 93%, and then Max, 88% of the time.
Well, they don't count, so it's a moral victory for Valtteri.
However, it is, of course. However, can you give me fourth? And of all active drivers, now there's some champions in there we haven't talked about. There's some guys leaving the grid. If you can give me fourth, I'd be utterly shocked.
Fourth is Jim Clark.
He's still driving? Is this 63?
Yeah,
it 1963?
It's no matter what stat we do, Jim Clark always makes his way onto the leaderboard somehow. Yeah, so I just throw that in there.
Ascari in 52 and Clark in 63 are always the answers. No, it's Lando Norris at 78%. So right behind Valtteri has made it to Q3 78% of the time. That's amazing. From there we have Seb, Charles, Fernando, Daniel, Carlos, and Checo rounding out the top 10. But I thought the Lando one in fourth was something that, I saw that through the week and I'm like, holy
no, that's
crap.
fine. I mean, right. We disagreed about this. Let's get into this before we even start the race review, right?
Yeah.
You thought it was a snooze fest.
I actually think Checo knew it too. He got on the radio.
Are you still awake?
No, we're not still awake.
Okay, so I enjoyed it right up until the moment that I didn't. And if we kind of do the foreshadowing before we kind of do the review, the moment I stopped enjoying it was the moment I realized those tires were going to last until the end. Once I thought we were coming up for one humdinger of maybe like both Red Bulls were probably going to have to pit with, say, 10 to 15 laps left to go.
The same thing.
And they're going to come out because they're eking out like a 10-second, 12-second lead over Lewis, 22 seconds average. That's going to drop them 10 behind with 10 to go. Fresh softs versus Lewis's old hards. This is going to be epic showdown. And it didn't happen. But everything leading up to that I thought was pretty good-ish. Whereas you just basically hate the whole thing, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I know you called me some names as we got started, and we'll go through this and cover the race. But my note was this, before the start, a great mix of soft and medium tires. It's going to be a strategy day, which I enjoy, and which usually makes the race spicy at the end. And then I wrote, speaking of which, Ferrari haven't had a blunder in a while. So it's hard to have a blunder when you turn your engines down to 4. I mean, they may go to 11, but today they had them at medium pace at best. What the hell happened to Ferrari?
Is it got to be an altitude thing? I don't know, because look at Haas, right? If you look at the Ferrari team, the teams with Ferrari engines, they all sucked pretty much today, right?
Look at Valtteri and yesterday he was on fire.
Actually, that's different. Maybe Alpha put some porridge in there, and that could negate it. Because really, Haas went nowhere,
but Haas hasn't been going anywhere anytime recently.
Yeah, they were threatening points last week. They finished what? They finished 11th and 12th last week. Whereas here they were basically getting caught by Latifi this week.
No, Latifi was 2 laps down and they rolled.
No, but at one point Latifi put a move on K-Mag, I think it was, right? It's like, what the hell's going on at Haas there? And then you look a little bit higher up the leaderboard and you're like, hang on a minute, Ferrari You often use the whole witness protection thing early in the season about George. We never saw them, right? I think I wrote a note here at lap 19.
They are in the
Ferraris
race.
Are actually on the track.
We had no idea. They were so far back. By the way, we'll get to the end. Another reason I thought it was boring, there were 6 cars on the lead lap at the end of the race. And 2 of them were the Ferraris a minute behind. So there were 4 cars in under a minute of each other for the lead. Boring. And so I wanted a strategy race to occur. And I was hoping the soft tires and then some mediums would require, as you said, a pit. And so I'm with you.
Let's
I'm with you.
Let's go in that order.
Go.
And so what did we end up doing? We ended up with a bit of a mixture at the front where we had some people on softs and some people on mediums. And what was therefore blatantly going to happen was the soft runners are going to start pulling away. The medium runners are going to try to do damage limitation but extend the stint and hope to pit later and blah, 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 blah. So it was probably never set up for lots of close racing right from the beginning, because that's what kind of started to happen, was that we had a couple of places towards the back we were getting some people getting feisty, but really it was all about Max disappears off a little bit, Lewis tries to anchor him back, sort of stays within sort of 2.5 seconds, but you know he's not going to catch him because he's on the mediums. But then it was interesting that Perez didn't really seem to be able to catch Lewis either, even though he was on the softs.
Yeah, but they all went rocketing past George, who had a bad first lap.
Yeah, agree, but I was surprised to see Max not pulling out more on Lewis and Perez not eating into Lewis, because they were on the mediums, right?
Agreed,
so,
but Perez is not apparently... I mean, he's a great driver. You know I love Checo, but he's not Lewis.
No, I know, but...
Which
Max
is why he couldn't
out,
catch him.
Max isn't pulling out on Lewis either. We're looking at about... He quite quickly made a 1.8 second, and it just stayed around 2 to 2.5 for about 10 laps.
Which is why I'm excited for Lewis in Brazil, because what you're saying is effectively Mercedes might have a car now.
No.
Yeah,
he finished 15 seconds behind him.
And
The track similarity... Anyway, we'll get to Brazil later, but the track similarities, the layout's exceptionally similar. A little bit of twisty-turny, long badass straight. Max is going to win that as well. But anyway, we'll get there. So, yeah, we just kind of got like a lot of... I'll use your phrase, Brian. We had a bit of a nothing burger while we were waiting for the strategy to kick into gear.
We hit it early.
And then around the 20-ishes, we start getting the stops kicking in. I thought, well, this is now where everything's going to get a little bit spicy. And this is when you disappeared offline and went on radio, didn't you?
I did. I had to. But hold on. You're missing the Gasly penalty. Can we go back to that for a second?
Yeah,
if we're
sure.
going to pick out the things that actually happened. So, first off, the gas man was running near the back. It was, at one point on lap 5, it was the 2 Williams, the 2 Haas, the 2 Astons, and the gas man, not in that order. And then we end up seeing kind of an interesting move where Gasly comes around in lap 14 on Stroll for 15th place and ran Lance off. And I mean, he ran him off. It was like, it was a move we've seen done a lot of times where you can't really make the move happen on track and you have to kind of outbrake someone on the inside and force both people off. And so they take some 4 laps to figure this out, and then they gave him a 5-second penalty. I really didn't like that.
No, but that's the new rule, isn't it?
I'm okay with the penalty.
Aren't they supposed to self-police now? And they're saying, if you don't give it back voluntarily, then we're going to come in and give a penalty. So isn't that what happened? At the moment it happened, I said to my son in the bar, I'm like, Gasly's going to give the place back straight away now.
Exactly.
He's got to give it back, right?
So I think that would have been a better penalty if he'd immediately given the place back and then tried to overtake Lance later.
But that's on them and the team, right? They should have told him to...
But I think the bigger penalty... So I'm with you. The rule is if you push the guy off, if you do that, that's new this year. If you run off, taking the position like that, you have to give it back. I think they should just made him give it back. Like
who made him give
Gasly?
It back?
I think they should have just said you waited too long. Still give it back. It would have been a bigger penalty for him to slow up.
That's not the penalty, though, is it?
But the spirit of the penalty has always been give the place back.
It was. But I think, and I might be wrong here, I think what they said was, we're going to let the team self-police this now. So if you don't hand it, we're not. The FIA aren't going to come on and say give it back. If you don't give it back, we're not going to come on and tell you to give it back. You're now into time penalty land. If you don't do it on your own volition, you get time penalty. End of story. So the FIA couldn't tell him. If they'd have told him to give the place back, everyone would have been up in arms.
And I'm saying
the rules up again.
Change the rule back. We now have the.
You're saying change the rule.
If you have the run someone off, it's a penalty, right? So you either give the spot back, or we're going to force you to give the spot back when we decide you've actually created the penalty, you've caused this to happen.
Yeah.
If you're not going to self-police, I'm going to let Albon get through, which almost happened but didn't. I'm going to let Albon get through on Lance, and now you're going to have to give back 2 spots. I'd like to see it be more penal. I'd like to see it be on-track penalty, not a time penalty served either after the race or in the pits. Personally, that's the way I would have preferred. They kept the new rule for determining it is a penalty or it is a foul, and either you self-police or we'll make you do it when we get a chance to look at it. That's the way I'd like to see it done. Sorry. I thought that was interesting because, as I said, it's the first time I've seen it done this way where the time penalty is used for forcing someone off.
Yeah, it hasn't actually happened too much this year, really, has it?
No.
The forcing off things. So it seemed to be like all that was happening last year. We just
Right. Exactly. And so that was the first one that I can remember with the time penalty where they didn't give the spot back. Sorry, go back to the pit stop.
No, that's fine. Then we had the pit stops come on, and all of a sudden Ferrari got on TV. But this is only because the Red Bulls pitted and came out behind the Ferraris and made very light work of then just slicing past them. So we just basically saw Perez come cruising up to past Leclerc, flew past him, much to the delight of the crowd, and then we watched the Ferrari disappear into the background, and we didn't really see them ever again. But at least it was nice to know they were still in the race. Lewis came in and went on to hards, and this is where I was like, this is the strategy call now. They go into hards,
Yep.
they eat the mediums out longer. Russell was actually coming on and saying, I want to make the mediums go longer and go to softs. And this is now in hindsight, you're thinking Russell was probably right, because he was going to do the inverse of what Red Bull did, right? Start on mediums, go to softs.
And it's what Danny Rick did, which worked great. And at the end, I want to talk about why Mercedes didn't split their strategy. But I at this point, the hards were working for Lewis. And I'm thinking, to your point, maybe we have something here. I was getting a little excited. Maybe the strategy is going to pay off. I was really hoping it would. And then obviously it didn't.
Yeah, and then the race kind of really woke up at this point now, with kind of the first set of stops out the way and people jostling for position. We had a Bottas, Ocon, Zhou. They were kind of all over each other. Bottas, I think, when he first came out on his hards, they just didn't seem to light up quick enough, and Ocon got him, but then he was kind of like not going to let him go. Like all of a sudden, the tyres seemed to wake up within about a lap of him being overtaken, and he was suddenly charging him back down again. Zhou, I don't know. Did you see the overtake when?
Yeah.
It looked like he pulled over to let them past. It didn't look like he just surrendered it because he knew he was going to get done and didn't want to potentially make it difficult because maybe Valtteri was one of the two coming up behind him. It was just a really lame, like, okay, I'm going to pull over. You two can go past. I thought Zhou could have defended harder there, but...
Well, Zhou and Vettel then got into it a couple laps, like 5-10 laps later. That was some good racing. Did you see that? That was back and forth, couple laps. You know, God, guys like Seb from last week on K-Mag at the end, you remember that? And K-Mag was like, it was an honor to race against him like that for the end at the last couple laps. Watching Seb race reminds me of Kimi last year, where you knew you could throw it in against him as long as you were both fair. He'd race as hard as he could, never ran you off the track. You didn't have to worry about him doing something stupid. And Seb, well, a lot of drivers you have to worry about.
I was going to say, talking of doing stupid things, what was Danny Rick doing?
Oh my
when
God,
he
was he not looking? Did he not notice he was in front of him too? So it's not like he didn't see him. It's not like he wasn't. What did he do? And by the way, here's my other problem with the 5-second penalty for Pierre. Pierre barely went off the track to make that move happen, within a few feet. And yes, he ran Lance off, but he almost stayed on himself. He got a 5-second penalty. Danny Rick turned in hard on Yuki. Turned in hard on Yuki, ruined his race, broke his car. He had to retire. 10-second penalty. But those are too close together.
He carried on pushing him. It was... I'm going to keep pushing you off the way.
Yeah, those are too close together. That there should be a bigger delta between those penalties, in my humble estimation. And so I think the 5 is too much because the 10 feels right. But anyway. Well, I don't know what he's doing.
You're not going to let it go, are you?
No, I hated that move. It's like the tires in Q2. Those should be the tires you have to start the race on. Okay, we're moving on.
Oof.
Then Danny Rick was on fire, right? At this point, he's knocking people off the track. It's like
he's on softs now, isn't he? Everyone
is
on hards
like,
around him.
I'm taking you, and I'm taking you, and I'll take both of you Alpines, and I'm taking you. And he's at one point the last person on the lead lap. He's like, I can race the leaders, and then they're like, yeah, you still got a blue flag. But it was amazing. He was driver of the day. Do you know that?
Yeah, where did he end up finishing? I pinged you on this because you said no, but he finished 7th, and then he had
with the
10
penalty.
seconds.
Even with the penalty, he still finished 7th.
Did he finish 10 seconds ahead of Vape,
Yes.
did he? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, amazing. Fantastic. When's the last
yeah.
time a McLaren's been 7th and the driver wasn't named Lando Norris? Because that's been his spot the whole year.
But at the same time this was happening, Lewis came on the radio
God.
with the message that we all knew was now beginning to unfold. They're going to make these mediums last to the end.
And our hards suck.
And they're RIP Mexican Grand Prix. Because it was at that point, and I again, we've said about how great a racer Max is, but it was at that moment where I basically lost interest in the rest of the race then, because I thought we were going to have a grandstand finish with the two Red Bulls being on different strategies to the two Mercs, and we just weren't.
You held out hope to make it to the 50s. I gave up hope early. Everybody was on different strategies, and then you could tell it was going to be a one-stopper at some point, just the way it was going. And I was hoping, like you, a little bit of hope. But
nobody's. But the weird thing is, and this is why you have to say hats off to that Red Bull design, maybe, is that nobody did that length of stint on the mediums the first time around because they were all suffering towards the end of their stint. So they were, I think Merck went to say 29 maybe. Not many people went beyond that. I think Alonso went to maybe 30. He was a late pitter, but I'm not quite sure what tyres he started, and he must have started on mediums. So it didn't look like the mediums had that amount of life in them. So when they pitted on whatever it was, there were 40 laps left, I think, maybe even more than that. What do we have? 71 lap race, right?
Yep.
And I think Red Bull came in the mid-20s. They got like best part of 45 laps to go. Nobody's felt that the medium could last that long. Everyone almost said this is a two-stopper now. It's going to be a sprint to the finish on fresh softs, and it just wasn't.
Yeah. Well, and then at the end, just to close out the actual race itself on lap 65, Norris took Valtteri. Fernando's engine let go. They brought out a virtual safety car. And by the way, great job by the marshals getting that off incredibly fast.
Super
and for
fast.
Fernando
That was
to
amazing.
park it at a place where he knew there was a gap in the wall. Both of them deserve credit. But none other than Mr. Level-headed, even-keeled, racing nerd Martin Brundle said, it would have been great if we'd had a real safety car to spice this thing up because otherwise it's boring. And it was a quick VSC. George wanted a pit. Mercedes said stay out. They probably should have pitted in retrospect because they did have the space behind them, and under VSC, it's not like they're going to get bunched up. He did pit at the end, did take the fastest lap, and was 2 seconds faster on the fastest lap than Checo. So had he pitted on 65 with 6 laps left, that would have given him, I'm not going to say 12 seconds because it's not going to be 2 every time. But it would have been enough to maybe have something happen. He's only 5.3 behind Checo when the safety car pulled off, or VSC pulled off. So
that one did
might have, but anyway.
Well, no, you see, I'm with you. It literally, I'm sure Paul will have some insight into this maybe, but it made no sense the way they did it because they'd got 30 seconds. So they'd actually got a full length pit stop in the bag, right? Because they said it's 22 seconds that you lose. So then when VSC came out, and you're not going to lose anywhere near that, then why not go softs now? Because you're not going to burn through softs in 5 laps. You're probably still going to get fastest lap because you'll have 5 laps to attempt it. But they actually brought him in on lap 70 and just gave him 1 lap shootout to get the fastest lap. I'm with you. Why not have given him a little bit longer to hunt down Checo? It was a bit of a... I just thought it was a bit of a weird one.
They were focusing on the race ahead, like trying to catch Checo for real on these tires and hoping still, to your point, that maybe they'd have to pit. They should have just mailed it in at that point and gone for a burner.
At lap 65,
sauce.
there's no way in the world Red Bull are still going to have to pit at that point.
Of course not. It made no sense not to go after him. So Max won number 14, a record in a season. We've covered Max in depth here. And so actually one note, two episodes ago, we did a Max retrospective when he became the world champion. I'd like to apologize for something in that episode. I hadn't thought during the SAP stats, we should have called it Max Verstappen. I forgot to use that name, and so I'm very sorry we didn't do that. But Max, number 14, most wins in a season. Now, not most relative wins in a season. That's still 52, Alberto Ascari. And it was interesting, right? 15 seconds behind, as you said already. Lewis comes tootling along. Good job, Lewis. Finishing second. That's great. I mean, it is. And
it is great, but
he earned it. I mean, he's got pace, not nearly Max's.
Then
Checo was behind him, unable to catch Lewis. And then way back again, even before the pit, was George on the fastest lap. And then like 40 seconds behind that was Carlos. At least he was on the lead lap. And then Charles in the race? I'm not even sure.
I don't know. I don't know whether my brain is playing tricks on me that I thought that this has given us better racing in the past, or maybe the new cars are exposing something, but there's something lacking about the Mexican track. I'm not sure what they could do to it to spice it up a bit, but it is crazy, like you say, that we had so few cars on the lead lap.
That's horrible. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah,
racing.
it was way too.
You gave
spread
me
out,
grief. I thought it was boring from the beginning to the end. I did hold out hope for a strategy race, and when none of it occurred, it left me with nothing personally.
No,
so,
I pretty much enjoyed it up to about, like I said, it was probably about lap 55 when the dawning realization kicked in that Red Bulls were not going to have to stop, and then there was nothing's going to happen unless like Max and Checo were going to be like 100% on the limit, that literally the mediums were going to explode on lap 72, maybe there was some jeopardy in there. But when they showed an onboard shot of Checo's car, I think at lap 69, and those looked like those mediums had just come out of the blankets. They were so smooth. There was no degradation. You're like, no, these things aren't going to let go. They're not on the cliff at all. They've just absolutely nailed the strategy, and well done to them. But I've got to be honest, and I want to be the biggest optimist in the world, because I said that Lewis is going to get a win this year, but unless mechanical failure or something hits Max, he's winning both the last 2 races. There's just too big a delta.
Good. I mean,
just too big a delta.
As I've said, when he doesn't win, it's a surprise. He's that good. The car's good, but he's on it. I mean, you can't give it all to the car. And so I agree with you. However, I've said this for a few weeks now, Lewis in Brazil. Just don't count him out. It's like a home track to him.
But
they love him there. He's actually an honorary Brazilian.
So what? All the love in the world doesn't make that car go any quicker.
Yeah, it does.
And it's got exactly the same.
When the more people clap for you, the faster your car goes.
Yeah, maybe. But look at the Mexican track versus the Brazilian track, and kind of look at the twisty turny sections and the one big long straight, which is kind
much
of very,
lower
very
altitude.
Yeah, but I don't think, if anything, and if you really want to go do the Debbie Downer on this, they actually said that the Merc looked quicker this week in comparison to the Red Bull, because perhaps the lower altitude meant that the drag effect on the Merc wasn't as bad, and it got slippier through the air and more comparable to the Red Bull. So maybe today was the closest he was ever going to get.
So I thought Merc was back. I don't know what happened to Ferrari. Did they turn their engines down? Was it the altitude? What happened?
I don't know. They said
it was horrible.
They just didn't have any pace.
None.
They didn't overtake anybody, I don't think.
Maybe each other once. Not even. No, I don't think they did.
It was just a bad race for Ferrari. And I know Saturday pace doesn't translate into Sunday pace, but when they're kind of all looking like we're looking at a 3-way fight here, Merc, Red Bull and Ferrari for pole, it doesn't usually then translate to it being so out of kilter on race day that one of those 3 is like completely off it. But they were.
Ferrari better watch out. They are on the verge of losing second place in the Constructors, and Mercedes hasn't won a race the whole year and may not. Yeah, that would be wild.
Yeah, it would be absolutely crazy.
So last thing I have for this is a 2-parter. I don't know why Mercedes didn't split strategy. Why not put one driver on the softs and one driver on the mediums to start? They were that sure of their strategy, and other people were doing softs. So it's not as though you would have been, an outlier. I was confused by that. Why they didn't split it and then use each other, play off each other to try to get one of them, towards the front of the race.
Yeah.
Pit early, put someone on softs, pit them early, put pressure on the Red Bulls on softs, make them do, get in early so that you don't get an undercut on them. I was a little surprised that Mercedes did no strategic moves really to affect anyone else's race. They just kind of said, I'm going to go do my own thing, start on mediums. We think this is best. The hards did not work. And you would have known that. You would have known that if you'd split your strategy. You wouldn't have had both cars on the same tire.
See, I would say the hards did work.
No.
Because Lewis didn't get dropped by... I honestly believe that they did not think that the Red Bull could make that medium last. And if they hadn't, that hard tyre worked perfectly, because Lewis he wasn't losing a huge amount per lap.
But he was complaining about that hard tyre 10, 15 laps into it.
Sorry. Breaking news, Lewis complains about tyres.
And other people, did you hear him get on about Max again? He's like, he's going off the track again. Come on, Lewis, take it easy.
But it was... the rate they were dropping, they were well within the window that, and everyone was doing the calculations. When Max comes out, he's not 22 seconds ahead of George. He's going to come out behind George. I mean, everyone thought this was coming. There had to be a 2-stop. So anyway, that just depresses me that it didn't happen. So let's move on and should we see what Mr. Pitlane Paul thought of the whole thing?
Actually, I have one last suggestion, and sorry, I'd like to rename this race Mexanonico, because it was a procession. It was a procession like Monaco, but it was in Mexico, and so you put those two together, and it's Mexanonico.
I think you spent too long looking at the Hilton channel, and it's dumbed your brain down. I
don't even know what
that means.
We're doing this. I combine the words. It's a portmanteau. Anyway, so we downloaded Paul's review real fast, but we are recording this right after the race so that we can watch the Packer game. So this will be as much a surprise to us as you all. Paul, what did you think?
Hey guys,
Well, that was Mexico. To be honest with you, a race that promised much, delivered pretty little, actually. It's the second city in the world, the largest number of museums, which in fairness would have been better viewing than that race. It just didn't get going, in my opinion. Mexico, where the race is held, actually built on a lake and sinks around 12 centimetres a year, which is around how much I sank in my chair watching it, to be honest with you. Apart from like little battles towards the end with the soft runners coming through, so on and so forth, it was actually, yeah, you know, you always look at events at the front of the grid and it just didn't really do anything for me. It was just sort of like, okay. And then the rest was a bit of a tyre gamble. There wasn't even a safety car. We threatened the safety car towards the end, which would have made Ricciardo's run like irrelevant. But, there we go. To be completely and utterly honest with you, I'll be glad to get out of Mexico. It's an interesting city. I have a weird phobia of people in face masks. So with the Day of the Dead festival on over the weekend, it's been pretty traumatic for me. And apart from the occasional robbing of Ferrari employees at gunpoint, we can say it's been a pretty average trip to Mexico City this time. Friday summed everything up with another pointless, boring Pirelli tyre test.
Thank you.
Qualifying. My guy Bottas, he did very well. Valtteri. My guy Valtteri. And by the way, for the American audience, it's Bottas because that's how it is. It's not Bottas, it's Bottas. But anyway, maybe I've had enough of USA over the last few weeks. But yeah, he did great. He did well. And then the tyres really let him down towards the end of the race. They were struggling. Same with Joe. We tried a little gamble with him, but on the whole, the points, first point since Montreal, so we're relatively happy with that one. But in honesty, Mexico Grand Prix, I won't lie to you, it was pretty disappointing. We get sort of away from here in just over 30 minutes' time, and we have a mad police escort rush to the airport, where my flight's already been delayed by an hour, but it's going back to London. So that's nice. A few days off before I head to Toronto at the weekend randomly, and then down to Sao Paulo for my second South American race in a row. A race which really for me is pretty, again, traumatic. It is the scene of an armed robbery on our team when Mercedes when I was there, so it's not a place I particularly enjoy going. And then we're into Abu Dhabi. There's really nothing to play for in this sport no more. Constructors is won. Drivers is one. If I got to touch on a cost cap penalty, look, I don't know. I think it's lenient. It is harsh. It does affect Red Bull. It's not going to affect them that much. For me, I would much rather see something like a 100-point penalty, which looking at this year wouldn't have affected them, but next year definitely, if it gets closer and Mercedes catch up, then it definitely affects them. So for me, that would have been the way to go. Maybe not 100 points. Maybe that's too harsh. I don't know. But a team like Red Bull, 10% aero, they can say it doesn't affect it. And if I'm being honest, as for Christian Horner asking the rest of the paddock to apologise to them, I don't know. He divides opinion, and my opinion of him is pretty low after a comment like that. But there we go. That's about as exciting as the week got. I'm going to open a bottle of Corona, stick a lime in the top, because that's what you do. No one really knows why. I think it's to do with flies. And then I'm going to get myself off to the airport, a few red wines. I don't need much more alcohol after the last few weeks I've had. On my last trip to America until next year, until Miami. And it's really sad because I've really enjoyed it. And if anyone is down in the Houston area and they fancy a trip to Galveston, where we spent a couple of days, what a place that is. Very quiet, very unique, very unusual, but wow, some good bars. Catch you all later. Enjoy.
Thank you, Paul.
I wish he would actually speak his mind though, because I'm left confused with that about whether he enjoyed the race or not. And,
right. I think he and I kind of aligned on the race. I did not know a Ferrari employee got robbed at gunpoint this week, though.
No, I mean I knew about him being involved in the Brazil thing before, but no, I wasn't. That's sad, and that it's.
All right.
Doesn't make you love the area, I guess, no. Especially when you've had an absolute. Well, I won't use the word I was going to use to describe the race, but like I say, enjoyed it till about lap 50, and then it just fell away.
I think you're in the minority.
Yeah, probably.
You're also in the minority in terms of talent with fantasy Formula One. So let's talk a little bit about last week, because we're doing these, as we said, kind of quickly, and for some reason numbers don't add up fast. And the play on, whatever it's called, play now is where George Costanza worked. Play on is the app for fantasy Formula One. So let's do last week, and then next week we'll come back to the Mexican GP. So last week for the U.S., we had Cruz R use a Mega Drive cruise seat, 250 points, dominated everybody. Followed by Renato L. flying Hakkinen. Great job, Renato. Stephen U. Vroomstappen. Danielle P. Mom is number one. I've read your name a lot, Danielle. Mom is number one. Good job. Ayal S. Nutcracker Wannabes in fifth. Andrew T. Recent 100 seconds of DRS. Andy, we had him on. And Alpha Taylor. Great job, 204 points. Roman M, Rampuri F1 team, Cy M, Safe Bet in 8th, Ryan H, Team 1 in 9th, Lee, Team Minimal Effort, good job Lee in 10th, and for this week only I'm going to go to 11th because it was me.
Oh my gosh, and there everybody, there in that little moment sums up the self-indulgence that is Brian.
I'm not doing like rounds of applause for 11th. I'm just saying.
But nobody, we never do anything beyond the top 10, but because you're 11th.
Yeah, and I got the mic. All right, and then for the season, just to recap after last week, going into this week, Andy T again from the 100 seconds, kicking some serious butt with Alpha Taylor in first. I'm in second. Red Bolino, Balotelli 21 in third. And just to be clear, at the end of the season, we will do another prize. Andy's out because he already won one. I'm out because I'm one of the hosts. So whomever is highest, not counting the two of us, and I'll probably drop out of it anyway. So right now, Balotelli 21, Red Bolino in the driver's seat for the T-shirt.
Nice.
But Roman M coming right behind, Rampuri F1 team, not far behind. Clint E with Yuki's potty mouth. I love it. Renato L flying Hakkinen also right in there. Vanch J, Team 1. Tomas H, you always make me try to pronounce this. Nazrak Nadamnik. Jacob Z, Team A. And then 10th on the season so far before the Mexico GP was Kerry H, Team 1. So great job to everybody in the league. 2 races left after the Mexican GP gets tallied to bring it home strong with your Mega Drives, wild cards, and whatever else. And as we said, there's a T-shirt still on the line.
Well, you're taking a breath there, but it's going to be you now, right? Because you're going to give an update about your ridiculous gambling habit.
Oh, God. I got a problem. Someone call one of those numbers. 1-800-GAMBLER.
So just remind everybody of the bet you put on last week, which was a surefire thing.
Surefire. I was so sure this was going to work. I was actually spending the money in advance, which I think is sign number 8. You got a problem. So I played a bet on the last 4 races of the season, USGP, Mexico, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, that the following 6 drivers would all score in the points for all 4 races. So it's effectively a 24-leg parlay, right? 6 drivers, 4 races, all in the points. 6 times 4, 24. And it was the top 3 teams, Max and Checo, Charles and Carlos, George and Lewis. And in turn one of lap 1.
No, worse than that. Turn 1 of lap 1 of race 1 of
race
your
1.
bet.
Correct, yeah. Couldn't have been any faster. The only way it could have been worse is if the car caught fire on the grid. That was the only way I could have gotten screwed any faster. When George runs right into the side of Carlos, knocks him out, DNF, bet is DNF. I got 4 races. I'm 4 seconds into the first race. Done. Which is a good reminder to everybody, don't gamble. And then,
Well, saying that, so did you learn your lesson and stop, Brian?
No, I bet another one, and I haven't even looked at this, so did I make points here or not? So I put one on today. I put one on that said, look, Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz, and Max Verstappen top 6 finish. With Alonso and Hamilton in the points.
I was waiting because I knew you hadn't on this, and you're reading this through, and you're getting all excited because you're thinking, "Hey, they all finished in the top 6," and then I knew.
And Hamilton at points, and then Alonso. No, Otmar, you screwed me, Otmar. Well, and that was all the money I'd put into it, so then I'm done. That was 2 bets. Did not work. Alonso went out like lap 55. I was getting close.
You were close, in fairness. At least this one lasted beyond the first corner. But I was looking at your slip that you'd put on here. I was like, oh, hang on a minute. They did all finish top 6. And may I went over Alonso for some reason, first of all, and said, and Hamilton points. So in my brain, I read this as you'd predicted those guys in the top 6 and Hamilton in points. And I was like, he's gone and won. And then I kind of read it again, and I saw a little Alonso there. I was like, oh, Brian's not going to be happy.
So it was actually lap 65 of 71, less than 10% left, and I got screwed. This one was only going to give me it was $100 for winning 225, so not a huge odds. Last one, the one that I lost 4 seconds in, was humongous odds. That's why I took it. It was like I put in $100, would have won $2,200. But so anyway, I lost $200, which I really didn't have, and life goes on, and I'll be eating ramen noodles for a couple weeks, as will the rest of my family, because of Fernando Alonso's reliability. Thanks, Otmar.
Yes, Fernando Alonso's reliability, not
Otmar,
your reliability with betting.
No, I nailed it. Fernando was on it. He knew he had to come through for me, and then Otmar couldn't get the team to make an engine that worked.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure if somewhere else on that list of things that mean you've got a problem is the denying that you have a problem, right?
I'm done. I don't have any more money for it. So the good news is the well is dry. Next year I'll be back at it.
Oh, right. Okay, so that summed up what, even if I was trying to pick the silver lining out of it, we all know it wasn't a great spectacle at the end there. Hats off to Max. Well done. 14 wins. We move on to a break week this week. We should have an interview lined up, so that's the biggest teaser trailer we're going to give you on that one. We should have a guest coming on, which will be really exciting. And then we'll start looking forward to Brazil. It's getting a little sad that we're coming to the end.
I know.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
And what that also means is it's actually coming to the end of our first full season as a pod, which is also actually quite exciting that we have a little anniversary that we know we did it. I say we did it. We still got 2 races to go yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't have any money to put on Lewis in Brazil, which I'm so sure is going to work out.
So here I am trying to have a nice little reminiscing moment that we're almost at the end of our
still
first
stuck
season
on
together,
gambling.
and you're still stuck on gambling.
Yeah,
So I think on that note,
when two friends and two fans talk about Formula One, I just want to say thanks to all the Dirty Siders who participate. Well, this is an awesome community. I'm proud to be part of it, and we all enjoy Formula One, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Everybody, we'll talk to you soon.